In the first episode, we'll start off with the Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes. Bucky's been having a tough time getting reacclimated to civilian life. He's been dealing with some nightmares about past transgressions that he's had. He's also been seeing a therapist, although seeing is used very loosely. It's a part of his pardon. It's pretty clear he doesn't want to be there and doesn't want to talk to her. But he has to because she needs to keep track of the fact that he's not out there becoming the Winter Soldier again. But it's not like his therapist is the only one he doesn't talk to. She takes his phone and realizes that he only has 10 phone numbers in there, and he doesn't talk to anybody. Sam has tried to get in contact with him a few times, but he doesn't even talk to him. After some pressure, she is finally able to get him to open up, and he admits that he's been crossing names off of his list of amends that he's made. The latest being a senator from New York who was a part of Hydra, and Bucky had a hand in making her a senator. Even after Hydra disbanded, she continued to abuse her power. So he put a bug in her car, which allowed him to get some dirt on her, even though it kind of violates the therapist's 3 rules. The first one being, don't break the law. That kind of does that. Even if he's in a state where he's allowed to do that, he's not allowed to do what he did next, which is take control of the vehicle, locking both parties into it, and driving it around. He does it, though, as a public service because he gives the intel that he got from that and gave it to the police to convict her. Now, rule number 2 of the amends is not to hurt anybody. He didn't hurt anybody badly. He did kind of punch a guy. And the final rule of the amends is to let the person know that he's no longer the Winter Soldier, he's Bucky Barnes, and he's there to make amends. And he did all of that. But the issue for Bucky is the fact that he's been coming to these therapy sessions for so long that the therapist kind of knows him. And she can tell that he must have been having nightmares even though he continues to say he didn't. And it's just a bold-faced lie. The nightmare that he's been having is when he was acting as the Winter Soldier, he busted into a hotel and killed a bunch of people. But there was an innocent civilian who just so happened to be there and witness it all. He was an innocent bystander. And instead of letting him go, Bucky murdered the guy. But the more that she pressures him to tell her about the dream, the more he gets frustrated. And he has to remind her that he's getting reacclimated to just being a civilian. He's well over 90 years old, and for most of his life, he's simply been fighting. Other than that minor stay in Wakanda, he hasn't had a lot of downtime. And the therapist asks him, what do you want? He says, I want peace. But she says, no, that's bullshit. I've seen so many dead bodies in my life as a soldier that I know that if you're given enough time to just sit by yourself, that'll haunt you. Either way, though, his therapy session ends, and it's not like Bucky has no friends. He has a few, or at least one. He goes to lunch weekly with an old man named Yuri. And Yuri is the man. As they're sitting in their normal restaurant eating, Yuri, on the behalf of Bucky, right in front of him, mind you, asks out the waitress, and Bucky's embarrassed, but the waitress says, why? I'm down. So they agree to meet the next night after her shift. But then suddenly Yuri gets really depressed because he sees Mochi and it reminds him of his son. His son had died under fishy circumstances. The police told him that it was wrong place, wrong time, but Yuri in his gut feels like that's not the case. And it bothers him of the fact that he'll never know exactly what happened to his son. The two eat their lunch, though, and head home, and the next day, Bucky returns to the restaurant for his date with the waitress. And after the waitress closes, they decide to play board games while she throws out some questions for some icebreakers. And Bucky is doing his best to answer her questions, but also doing his best not to give her all the information. And it's going great until she brings up Yuri, and about how sad it is that Yuri's whole demeanor changed once his son died. She agrees with Yuri in the sense that he'll probably never know exactly what happened to his son, and this upsets Bucky so much that he actually walks away. He heads to Yuri's apartment and makes up an excuse of why he showed up, saying that he had to pay him for lunch. But then you find out that the real reason why he showed up was because Yuri's son was the one that the Winter Soldier killed, the innocent bystander who just happened to be there that moment, seeing Bucky kill those people in the hotel, and he's always felt guilty about that. And Yuri is on his list of amends. He just hasn't gotten around to explaining himself. Now, over with Sam, he's having trouble still processing the fact that he was given the shield and that Steve is gone. He continues to do missions for the Air Force, the covert kind, and one such mission is stopping a criminal organization known as LAF, who have kidnapped a liaison just over Tunisia, and their goal is to get to Libya, because once they enter Libyan airspace, they know that the U.S. government can't enter. So they've tasked Sam with getting the liaison back as quietly as possible. The issue is, LAF hijacked the plane. So Sam flies in and confirms, yeah, no, they're there. And then he enters the plane, where he's greeted by the greatest welterweight champ of all time, George St. Pierre. So for all you UFC fans out there, if you've been wondering why he retired, it was to join the LAF and take up criminal organizations. But St. Pierre is going by his nickname, Batroc, and you might recognize him because he was the guy in The Winter Soldier who Nick Fury had hired to hijack a ship, but it was all orchestrated so the Black Widow could swoop in and steal some files. Well, he's moved on from ships to planes, and he's got Sam hot on his tracks, and he's trying desperately to get the liaison to the Libyan border, but at the last second, Sam swoops in, grabs the liaison, and is able to save the day. He heads down to the ground and meets with his contact, who is his eyes on the ground, a guy named Torres, and they just have some downtime getting something to drink. Torres tells him that LAF is really just concerned with making money. They're using the chaos of the blip to do that. The group that he really has to worry about is called the Flag Smashers, and they believe life was better during the blip, and they've got quite a following on the message boards. Sam tells him, hey man, just keep an eye on it, let me know. But since Torres is always on message boards, there's a lot of rumors going around about what happened with Steve. And one of those rumors is that Sam flew him to the moon and Captain America is currently on a moon base. But Sam laughs that off. And then when Torres asks him, hey man, where are you headed off to next? He says, I'm headed off to Washington to talk about moon stuff. When in reality, he's headed to Washington to donate Captain America's shield to the Smithsonian. He's just decided that he can't possibly take up the mantle. He feels like it's best if it's in a museum. And after his press conference in front of media members, politicians, and Rhodes, one such politician comes up to him and tells him, you made the right decision. But then Rhodes asks for a word privately. And he asks him, hey man, why didn't you decide to become Captain America? Sam explains that when he was given the shield, he just felt like the shield belonged to somebody else, and that somebody else was Captain America, Steve Rogers. After his trip to Washington, he heads to Louisiana to meet with his sister Sarah and his 2 nephews. And while Sam was gone, whether it be doing missions for the Air Force or the 5 years he was gone during the blip, Sarah has been in Louisiana holding the fort down with the family business, fishing. But it hasn't been easy. She's barely been keeping things afloat. And she really wants to sell their childhood home and the boat that her father started the business on, but Sam is totally against that. So Sam convinces his sister to head to the bank and apply for a loan. And it looks like it's going great because the bank manager recognizes Sam. He even asks for a picture with him. Unfortunately for them, though, Sam's celebrity status isn't enough to get them the loan, and it leaves Sam pretty surprised and his sister pissed off. She tells him, I appreciate the fact that you went off and fought monsters and defended the country, but when you were away, I had to hold things down at home. And you don't get to just come back and try to right your wrongs because you couldn't deal with what was going on here. You have no idea what happened the past 5 years. I was here with 2 kids, and I was able to hold it down, but just barely. He reminds her, though, that half the boat is his and half the home is his, and he's not selling. He heads back and starts trying to fix the boat, and as he's doing so, he's getting a lot of nostalgic feelings. But then all of a sudden, he gets a text message from Torres telling him to call him on a private line. And that's because Torres had followed that Flag Smashers group to a meetup, where somebody hands out a bunch of masks, they all were the same mask, and then they all got an alert that said, run. And when that happens, some guy jumps out of a window with 2 duffel bags full of money, and Torres follows the guy. But this guy is insanely strong. I mean, he's throwing people around like they weigh 3 pounds. And Torres tries to arrest him, but the guy busts Torres up pretty good, breaking his orbital bone. Now, Torres was smart. He was filming it the whole time, so that's what he wanted to show Sam, the video. Torres tells him, you don't think it could be, but Sam just cuts him off and says, hey, I'll circle back. And that's when Sarah walks in the room and says, Sam, you have to see this. She turns on the TV, and that same politician who told Sam that he was doing the right thing by donating the shield is on television saying how the world needs a hero. More importantly, how America needs a hero. America needs somebody to keep them safe. And that's when he introduces a brand new Captain America who is sporting the shield that Sam donated to the Smithsonian. Thanks for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to this channel. Like the video if you liked it. Hit thumbs down if you don't. Be nice in the comments section. Nasty comments hurt my feelings. I work hard on these. If I make a mistake, it happens. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen, it'll be up soon. Sharing is caring. Put it on your MySpace page or your away message. And check out my podcast, Scene Invaders, wherever you listen to podcasts.